All right, everybody, welcome to this month's February 2023 PatternFly community meeting. I am Nicole. I am PatternFly's Scrum Master, and I'll start the meeting off today with just a few community topics and announcements before we get into a few presentations. So the first is a reminder I've made during the past few community meetings, but PatternFly and the Red Hat user experience team in general has been aiding in an effort to try to improve product accessibility at Red Hat. And we've created something of a scorecard that kind of, if filled out, creates a snapshot into the current status of accessibility compliance in your product and helps you create a plan for how to improve that. It's a great first step if you know your product is going to be needing a VPAT soon, which should be all products relatively soon. So if you have no idea what that's about, if you're curious for more information, absolutely reach out to us. We're happy to partner. We've partnered with a couple of products already on filling out these scorecards and making a plan for accessibility improvement and violation addressing and things like that. So that's just the first update. Another reminder is that currently right now, the PatternFly team is sort of all hands on deck on working on our next major release of PatternFly, which is scheduled to be released in about June. We've been working on it for the past month and a half, almost exclusively, and are making great progress. I even have an update that about a week ago, we concluded our first round of V5 alpha testing. So we've been testing our earliest candidates of our next version 5 of PatternFly in a few products. Basically just, pulling in the alpha versions, running the code mods we've written thus far on those code bases and seeing how grand the level of effort was to get from having run code mods with these new versions to getting the product building and running again with all the changes. So if you're curious about the status of that very first round of testing, we do have a summary of the results and the process all found in the document linked in the slides. A few great call outs were made during that testing. We're working on resolving a few issues uncovered. Once those are all resolved, we'll begin round 2 of alpha testing. So if you're curious to get involved with that and you'd like to try to see the lift for updating to V5 as it stands right now, reach out to me. We'd love to have you give it a shot and tell us how it seems. And hopefully we'll have some results from round 2 to report at the next community meeting. If anybody has any questions about any of that, absolutely let me know, slow me down. But it's exciting stuff right now in PatternFly land and for around the major release. I think, yep, okay, those are the only community updates I have today. I will call out as well, though, that since our last community meeting, we officially have released the last version 4, or official version 4 release of PatternFly. That was, we call it milestone 2023.01. I have linked in the slides here the React release notes and core release notes, as well as some release highlights. At least one of which will be highlighted at the end of the meeting today as a presentation. But generally, this last V4 release was a lot of bug fixes, a lot of cleanup, not a lot of new features per se. A lot of the newest features are going to be included in the next major release that we've been working on. However, we've had a few products even contact us directly as they've tried to update to this latest milestone, this latest release, that a handful of build errors pop up, and that is because we took advantage of this release to change the order of the parameters in a bunch of callback functions in a lot of our beta components. We're trying to make it so that anytime you're using a callback function in any of our components, the event parameter is the first parameter that is returned, and that's something that can be consistently counted on across all of our components. With our major release, we're going to be doing that as a breaking change to all of our non-beta components, all of our consistent components. But in order to make the lift to the new major release a little bit less burdensome, we decided to go ahead and make that breaking change to the beta components with this release. So if you use beta components, some of the most popular ones that got impacted were the search input or text input group components. If you use those and you update to this release, you just might have to change the order of the parameters in your callback functions to get it to build again. If you have any issues with that, let us know. And that will be something that will also be true, hopefully done with a lot of code mods with the rest of our components to create consistency across PatternFly. So if you have any questions about that, let me know, reach out to us. But just a note for anyone trying to make sure they're up to date with the latest V4 release ahead of the next major release. So I do recommend that. I recommend any product that is hoping to take in the major release of PatternFly to be React 18 compatible, to pull in fully supported dark theme with version 5. If that's something you're looking forward to doing in your product, making sure that you're up to date with the latest version of V4 at the end before you've done that will be a great help in getting V5 running as fast as possible when the time comes because of changes like this. So if you need any help with that or have any more questions, again, yeah, reach out. Okay, I think, all right, that's all I have. So with that, I am going to pass it off to Ivan. I'm happy to continue sharing if you'd like, Ivan, or I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, you can continue sharing.
Okay.
Nicole, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
Is the V5 of PatternFly using the new React or not?
React 18?
Yep.
Yes, that is what V5 will be. That's one of the major efforts right now is to make sure that version 5 of PatternFly will fully support React 18. Yes.
Thanks.
All right.
Cool. Yeah, you can go ahead and move on to the next one. Oh, Nicole, I'm not sure if you want to answer that question first. That's in the chat.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Support or require, Ricardo. So what the policy for PatternFly is that we basically try to always support the most recent 2 versions of React. So what that means with this major release, version 4 officially supported versions 16 and 17, and with this newest release, we're planning to drop official support for React 16, but we'll still support 17 as well as 18. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, great.
Cool. Yeah, so from the slide, it's the same as from last community meeting. The only thing I highlighted was the study that was concluded in February around theming preferences and product use context. And that's what I'm going to take a few minutes to go over high-level findings for that. So you could go ahead and move to the next slide.
Oh, yep, sorry. There you
go. Yeah, so this is essentially a one slider kind of going through the main background and goals, method and findings. So at a high level, the goal for this particular study was to better understand, first off, the context in which Red Hat customers use our products. And in turn, within that context, understand their preferences when it comes to theming. And for theming, for this particular study, we're talking about light theme, dark theme, and high contrast theme. And the third goal was to better understand what the default is. There a preference when it comes to default theme to kind of represent that face of the Red Hat product. So we ended up running a survey. It was sent to our customers. We ended up getting close to 300 responses. And the top findings that I listed here, I'll go over briefly. So the first one is around that first question, around the primary context of use. So in order to better understand theming and preferences, we need to understand how they're using our products, where they're using it, because it could impact their preferences. So the main takeaway was that the primary context of use for our customers is somebody who works during the daytime in a neutrally lit office setting. So there's a little bit of detail under there, which you can see, like morning and afternoon were the most common usage time for our products, 89 and 88% respectively, from the 294 responses. And also just a note, you'll see that nighttime use is much lower. And when it comes to the office location, you'll see that a little bit over half of the respondents said that they work in an office during the morning and during the afternoon. And not surprisingly, the home was the second most popular work location. So that being said, that's why the office is part of that primary context of use. And the last part of that context of use is how they interact with our products. So for this particular survey, we had categorized four main contexts of use when it comes to actions they take with our products. The first one is CLI interactions. The second one is reading documents associated with our products or large blocks of text. The third one is GUI interactions. And the last one is monitoring. So like monitoring dashboards associated with our products. And the finding shows that CLI interactions is the most common interactions with our products. So it's also the interaction that people spend the most time on. So on average, we found that it was approximately 1 to 6 hours a day spent on CLI interactions with our products, and between 15 minutes and an hour for the rest of the interactions, including GUI interactions, monitoring interactions, and reading documentation. So that's kind of what ruled it into the idea of a primary context of use. And the second bullet point is a continuation of that from a theming perspective. So keeping into your mind that context of daytime, office, usage of our products, respondents selected their preferences for the different themes across the different time ranges in which they typically use our products. So the main finding from here is that across all of those activities, for those times, those average times, the customers did prefer dark theme. And there is a little bit of a difference between CLI activities and all the other activities I called out in those sub bullet points A and B. So you'll see that dark theme was more strongly preferred for CLI related activities across the 1 to 6 hour time frame. And it was noted that it was because it helps with highlighting syntax differences and reading and better like seeing those differences, and having a dark interface helped with that. For the other activities I mentioned, it was actually a little bit more even between 45 and 50% across the different activities and the different time frames between 15 minutes to 1 hour. So it wasn't as strongly, there wasn't such a strong preference compared to CLI activity, which essentially it doesn't negate necessarily the desire for a dark theme, but it shows the desire for, there's essentially desire for both in a sense. And the last bullet point I have, the third one, is around that idea of a default theme and whether the question was primarily around whether like dark theme should be kind of that default, should we switch it? And again, similar to the second bullet point, there was nothing like super strong that pointed towards one theme or the other. Like none of the theming options ended up having more than half of the respondents selecting it. So you'll see like 48% felt that the dark theme should be the default versus 39 for light theme. So dark theme still came out on top, but less than the majority. Yeah. So just to wrap that up, I think these findings help validate the work that's been done on the dark theming feature for the new PatternFly releases, and also could help maybe within the teams to kind of push the adoption of dark theme for their products as well. So, yep. That's all I got.
Yeah, I'll call out while we're here. I mentioned earlier that React 18 is a major selling point. A major selling point for the next major release. Another one is this theming concept. We're hoping that being able to switch between light, dark, custom themes will be much easier with this next major release. And yeah, so then the question became, is this an opportunity to switch our default theme? But I think the decision is still pending, but this research is really interesting.
Yeah, so I see, Gary, you had a question. So there was a question in the survey. I didn't put it in here, but there was a question about like, what is your like single most preference theme if you only had to choose one, regardless of activity, regardless of like time spent on that particular activity. And a system default was one of the options, but it actually came it was ranked below single theme, like dark theme, and single theme, light theme. So there seems to be, at least from the feedback, that if somebody is to select a theme, they're more likely to stick with one. At least from a user research perspective, but yeah.
And somebody probably on the CSS side can correct me if I'm wrong, but there have been people who've been using our dark theme so far to apply it to match system settings when applicable. Is that true? Is it possible to do that right now as we've been developing this?
Yeah. Like I think Garrett is mentioning in chat, you certainly can, and and that is how we've given some guidance on how to implement it that way, so that you can use your system setting and then you can override that by user preference.
And
awesome.
Oh, I was just gonna add one last thing, because there's a accessibility issue to have both light and dark. So there was some finding around. We did have some people with visual impairments take the survey, and there were some noticeable differences, although none were significant. So the largest percentage difference between those with visual impairments and those without occurred for CLI activities. But regardless, dark theme always came at the top for preferred for those with and without visual impairments. Just another tidbit there.
Yeah, and I think there was also talk in this, I don't know if it's called out in this slide, but we talked about dark versus light themes. It was also high contrast themes were also talked about and asked about in the survey too, right?
Yeah.
So we have some data around the preference for high contrast themes, and there were some people who opted in for that for sure.
Yeah, there were, and unlike the visual impairments, yeah, dark theme came, even for those who had visual impairments, like dark theme still came out on top over high contrast theme. Light theme even came out on top over high contrast theme for those with visual impairments.
Yeah, but possibly there might be a future world where we have PatternFly supported other themes like high contrast, possibly. That's been mentioned before as a possible future.
Yeah.
So if you have any other thoughts about themes or questions, there'll be definitely more talk about it with this next major release coming up. So thanks so much for this, Ivan. All right, let's see. Next up, we are doing another installment of Extension of the Month. And this month we're highlighting our newest extension, which has not even officially been released yet, but we wanted to give people a preview into sort of what we've been working on. And so I can hand it over to Don. Would you like me to continue sharing, or would you like to share?
You can continue, and then when I get to the demo, I'll just take over.
Okay.
I only have a few comments on the next slide.
All right.
All right. So what we did recently is we added a new extension. It was taken out of console work that they did. And we also used the extension seed, which Austin has been working on. So thanks, Austin, and thanks to the console team for all the help in getting this up and running. I mean, I'm creating all this stuff so we can get this in as an extension. Right now, we currently have it running on OpenShift. There's a PR out for it. But you need to have a certain version of OpenShift to show it, so I can't demo that part. But I'll demo the plugin anyways, just as how the extension anyway, just so you know how it works. Let me just take the screen. All right, so now we have this new feedback modal. You have to give it you don't have to give it a lot of props. I mean, you do. It's pretty easy to get working. You just have to give it a few props to get it up and running. Basically, you can have it go to a URL, which is what it does in this example, or you can have a function that does something when you click on, like, share feedback or join a mailing list or report a bug, which is what they do in console. So there's much to get it up and running, and when you bring it up, you get the options you choose. So in this case, we chose to show share feedback, open a support case, and inform directions of Red Hat. So if you click on one of these links, right now it's taking you into a Qualtrics form where you can fill this in to give us information. And if you open a support case, it takes you to the link where you can open a support case. So if I put my password in, I can go through here and open up a support case for this if I'm having issues and found a bug. Alternatively, for the form direction of Red Hat, you can click on this as well, and you get to go through the survey and fill this in, so you can join the community and give a user experience feedback to us and the researchers. So that's pretty much how it works in this case. Again, you can also, if you give it functions, then at that point you end up having other ways, so you don't have to pull up a page. You can just basically send the data yourself. It's still in, I want to say, beta-ish, because there's still some things to work out and some APIs can change, but you can use it now. It also takes localization, but you have to localize the text. So let's see if I can find examples. So in this case, it was localized for OpenShift. So all the text is localized here, and it's just a type you give it, just so we know what to put in. So you can use your i18next, or you can use whatever you want to translate the string. Just tell us the string, and we'll put it in. And that's pretty much it. Is there any questions?
Yeah, where can I submit feedback? Oh, sorry, I'm just kidding.
Feedback on the feedback.
You can submit that directly to me.
yeah, it exists in its own repo. It can be imported and tested and played with or included in a product if you're chomping at the bit, if anyone's interested. But hopefully before too long, it'll be officially released and included on the website on patternfly.org. So you'll be able to see the documentation there when it's a little bit more hardened. Before too long, I think. All right. All right, with that, let's see who's up next. We just have a couple updates from the React devs from this last release of version 4. So the first is going to be Jenny has an update to demo about Dropdown, I think.
That is correct. All right. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to share. Alrighty. So yeah, we have a new beta variant on the Dropdown component now. So this is on the split button Dropdown. We have a new progress checkbox variant. So that lets you click on either of these checkboxes here, and then it kicks into a loading state. And then once the loading state is done, it checks off that checkbox. And then that can be done via the new is in progress prop here. And that can be set to a timed out Boolean value that you can tie into your onChange function. So you can call your is timed out via your onChange and then decide whether or not to show the progress icon depending on whether or not the state is timed out or not. And yeah, so yeah, that is a cool new feature on the progress dropdown.
All right, thanks. And the other update is actually from me. So let me share one other update with this last release. We had a request for how to include an empty state if you're searching on a dual list selector and you filtered out all results. So what we did is I enhanced our composable dual list selector examples to include the empty state if you happen to filter out all of the options. We use our empty state component in the pane that's been filtered so that no results are found. It's only included in our composable implementation. It's not baked into the dynamic basic implementation, partly because that would require breaking changes to that dynamic implementation, and we're so close to a major release. So if anyone is looking for that soon, you can implement that by using our composable structure to build your dual list selector a little bit more custom or take advantage of some of its more flexible features to have an empty state. Just want to highlight that since there was a few people who had requested it. But I think that's mostly, that's all. It includes the ability to take action from within, but this is all configurable since it's composable. You basically build the empty state component. If I can find it fast in this long example. Yeah, you build the empty state yourself. So you can have it structured however you'd like, but if you want the most basic, definitely PatternFly endorsed design, it's in here. So hopefully that's helpful, and that's the update for me. And I think that is all that's on the agenda. Let me just double check the agenda real quick and make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Is there any other updates we want to give about the major release? Evan? Yeah? Oh, I can't hear you. One sec.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Great. All right. Sorry about that. One update that's top of mind just after chatting with one product team this morning is I definitely see a lot of familiar faces on here, which is great. Maybe a couple of new faces, which is also great. We got some feedback that there, I guess, were some rumors or concerns or questions floating around the major release. So I suspect that probably a lot of people on here have kind of heard the pitch once or several times. But that said, if you do get questions or hear concerns or really any sort of feedback on it, we would definitely love to not only help answer those, but be aware. So if there is another forum that we can share that information with, we are all for transparency and would love to, help quell any concerns and make sure that the community at large is informed about the major release. So I guess the TLDR, just a very quick recap, is that unlike previous major release or breaking change of switching from Angular to React or replacing all the components and classes, we're really focusing on incremental enhancements, and there are breaking changes which necessitates the major release. But hopefully we can keep those targeted and as impactful as possible while still making the release process as smooth as possible for consumers. So anyways, and chatting with them, I said I'm happy to hop on a community call with their team if that's easier, if they don't have representatives here that can take that information back, or if they have like a Slack channel, that would be good to share a slide deck that walks through that, or whatever it may be, a mailing list. So that just got me thinking, if you're on this call and you're familiar with it, but you're hearing questions from other people and you think maybe there's another forum we could share it, definitely just let us know, or feel free to pass those questions right along to us and we can follow up as needed. We're really excited about the release, and for anyone who hasn't been in the loop as much as maybe some of us on this call, we want to get them excited too. So I'll just leave that there. And if you do have any questions or any suggestions for where we can go, we would love to hear that. Thank you.
We do have ample time this month for any other questions anybody has for the PatternFly team while we're here before I wrap us up. So I'll leave some space right here for a moment if anyone has any questions.
So is that feedback extension intended to be used outside of Red Hat? I guess obviously not.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, you can use it outside of Red Hat. There's nothing in it that's specifically to Red Hat. You can change the text to whatever you want. You can hide and show. So if you didn't give it like on share, the only one you have to give is on share feedback. But if you didn't give it like report a bug or join a mailing list, they just want to show up as options. But you can definitely change the text and use it any way you want. And you can tell it what to do. So you can either have it go to a URL, or you can have a function that comes back and you can have some sort of other mechanism that you want to collect your feedback, and you can use that instead.
Okay, great. The other question I had was the topology was, I heard, was going into its own extension. Is that going to be part of 5?
Yeah, I can. I think Jenny could probably speak a little bit to that. Do you want to talk about the future of topology?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think yes, it looks very promising at the moment, and I think we have it out in its own repo, and I know Joachim just approved it recently, so it should be going in at some point soon. We'll just probably have to make some corresponding updates in org to just get it onto the website, like the same way that catalog is right now. So we'll have to look into seeing what changes are necessary in order to get things in the docs the same way. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, we think so.
So it'll be in its own repository as well?
That's right. Yep, that's the plan.
Yeah,
Okay.
up until recently, topology lived very tightly coupled with the PatternFly React component library. But we've just decided to, just for the sake of ease of maintenance in the long term, separate them into 2 separate repos, but they'll still be maintained as it had been. And actually, the website very soon will have a multiplication of the number of the volume of documentation and demos about how to implement various features in topology, because Jenny's been working really hard with Jeff to expand that. So you're going to see even more support and documentation very, very soon for topology. It's getting a lot of new life breathed into it.
Yeah. Well, you got the new pipeline version
Yes.
as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I just merged that PR recently to add the documentation, so it'll be on the website shortly for pipelines.
Yes, it's really exciting. Lots of people have been requesting that, so it's an exciting update.
Thanks.
Great. All right, so what I'll do is I will be sending out the recording along with the slides in PDF form so everybody can access the links to the PatternFly mailing list after this meeting and to our various Slack channels. So if you're not on the PatternFly mailing list, the link is right here in the slides. If you are curious about following the community events that we have, such as office hours, the community meeting, our design share, you can view all of those events as well as projected release windows and things like that on the PatternFly community calendar, which via this link you can import into your personal Google Calendar if you'd like. As if those dates ever have to change for whatever reason, they'll be reflected in that calendar, so that might be helpful. My contact information is there if you'd have any questions or if you'd like to present any work you have that related to PatternFly in a future community meeting, reach out. Our next development office hours are March 15th. And I think that's all I have for today. So thanks everyone for coming to this month's community meeting, and I hope to see you next month.